Solar the Sun, Legend of Artorias, the Abysswalker. And it was made 6 years ago. What the fuck is this?
After the advent of fire, 3 powerful souls were claimed by those who came from the dark. The first was claimed by Nito, first of the dead. The second went to the witch who fell to the flame.
It's me, thanks for 5.
And the last went to Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight.
This is the guy I beat.
But there was a 4th soul, discovered afterward and hidden from the lords. The Dark Soul.
Oh.
And so, the first human was furtive, and kept his soul a secret. Lord Gwyn used his Lord Soul to usher in an age of fire and light, appointing 4 trusted knights to defend the realm. There was Dragonslayer Ornstein, captain of the guard.
I beat him.
Hawkeye Goth, unmatched.
He was the guy that shot the dragon down.
Kiaran the Assassin, who laid waste to Gwyn's enemies. And Artorias, the Abysswalker.
Oh, there he is.
But in time, the flame began to fade. The age of the lords was ending, and the dark age of men was to begin.
The 4 kings were powerful men.
Okay.
Only their hearts were
Watch the newer one that's remastered. Just a second. Oh, this one here? The updated one. Because there's... Yes. Okay.
In Gwyn's Age of Fire, there were 4 knights who distinguished
wow.
themselves above all others. First, there was Hawkeye Goth, who fought in the First War against the dragons. He exulted in the thrill of the hunt, plucking dragons out of the sky with his enormous greatbow.
I'm not seeing any parts about
Soon,
Dark Souls 3.
the only dragons left were in his memories, which he revisited endlessly.
Okay.
Fighting on the ground was Ornstein, the dragon slayer. He wielded a long, lightning cross spear that could be stamped deep into a stone dragon's hide.
Or
its
my
curious
character's
design
back.
went on to remind many of an exiled god of war, though none of them dared to speak his name. And then there was Kiran, whose talents differed considerably from the previous 2.
Okay.
A stealthy assassin, she would have been no match for dragons, and so she must have killed for Gwyn in the Age of Fire to follow. She dazzled her foes with streaks of gold in the night, and then stung with the vicious poison of her silver tracer.
Okay.
But in the Age of Man to come, none were as well equipped as the great knight Artorias. For nothing, not dragons, nor disunity, nor even his enemies, frightened Gwyn like the dark. The dark soul of man filled the Lord of Light with fear, for one day, Gwyn knew, the fire would fade, and humanity would inherit the world. His world. So while he still had time
I thought Gwyn
and
was
power,
a human.
Gwyn began to rig the world in his favor. Mankind had stood amongst those who set out to slay the ancient dragons.
What the fuck?
And, as if in thanks, Gwyn bestowed upon pygmies and men the Ringed City, an enormous, gilded city located at World's End. The walls were as tall as mountains, and above them soared Medir, an immortal archdragon that was raised by the gods.
Wait,
Below
why do they want you
slumbered
to
Gwyn's
stop?
youngest daughter, the
What do you mean? Why do they want me to stop? I don't know.
Why would he stop, chat?
Like, I mean, I don't know what people would want me to look at. I mean, this Dark Souls 3, like, who cares? Like, I mean, it's the same content, right? I mean, it's just lore. I mean, the way I look at it is, like, if I understand the lore, I can appreciate the game as I experience it. I want to be able to appreciate and experience the game. Like, it's not like they're telling me what to do on a boss. I want to know what's happening.
Princess Filianor, a woman of enormous faith and power, who Gwyn gave up to protect the pygmies until the very end of the world. And at first glance, you might think these acts benevolent. You might think they were kind.
Who cares about
but
the
in the
pygmies?
end, it was just a trick of the light. The walls were not for protection. The dragon had an eternal duty to battle the dark, and Gwyn's daughter, Filianor, would never see her father again. The purpose of the Ringed City was not to protect the holders of the original Dark Soul, it was to imprison them, like a ring of fire that encircles the darkness of humanity.
Oh, shit.
And man was, in fact, branded with this very seal, the Dark Sign. And despite clear evidence of their heroism in the war against the dragons, their Dark Knights never were lauded for their service. So it's no wonder, then, that in all of the spellcraft and the hexes that stem from humanity, one thing remains constant. It craves a free will of its own,
Is
and
Bloodborne a
it
separate
writhes
universe
against its shackles.
than Dark Souls?
Perhaps the first example of this was the
I
Mad
was
King.
wondering about that.
He was pygmy royalty,
It is, okay.
and he rebelled against the light. We have no idea what crimes he committed, but they must have been terrible, for he was put to death by Shira, a knight of Filianor.
Ooh.
Only the Mad King would not die, and Shira, with the Mad King impossibly entwined around her spear, had no choice but to hold him quietly in a dark room until the end of time. There were, of course, other human cities outside of the Ringed City.
Okay.
One such example was the Dark City of New Londo, which was governed by 4 human kings and
Oh!
protected by Knights of the Dark Blade.
Those are the guys
Kings
that
were
got beat.
renowned for their
Remember, I
foresight,
one-shot that boss.
and they even had fragments of Gwyn's
is a joke.
very own soul bestowed upon them, so that they could better govern their people. Of
Okay.
course, this too was another trick of the light, for what lies at the
Okay.
top of New Londo but Filing Shrine, a place of undead sacrifice to Gwyn's Age of Fire. So no human city was permitted to flourish without a clear benefit to the Age of Fire. And there was no better example of this than another human city called Uldasil, which
Ooh,
was a
this is
golden
the-
land of light sorcery.
This is the DLC.
Light, it turns out, can be manipulated to foster illusions. It can hide your intentions, it can
He turned
even
into
mess
a
with the
tree.
fabric of time. And spells of this nature would be of great value to the gods in the coming years, so Uldasil flourished, an exemplary city for Gwyn's pantheon, because it was proof that humanity could be taught to serve their interests. And so it was that a group of missionaries from Uldasil embarked upon the Ringed City, perhaps to preach and reinforce
good video.
the power of the light
Wait.
in this dark city. One of these missionaries was called Half-Light, and he was a talented individual
I really
who was
like this.
wielding the powerful artifacts of his homeland. He would go on to earn the favor of Filianor, and he would even earn the legendary dragon weapon of Medea. So it was no surprise that
I need that.
Half-Light elected to stay behind, becoming the last recorded spear of the church. And just as Half-Light visited the Ringed City and even stayed behind, the reverse was also true of a certain pygmy from the Ringed City. This pygmy's name was Manus. And while we know nothing about the nature
That's
of
the
his
boss.
visit to Uldasil,
That's the
we do
fucking
know
boss.
one thing. He died there,
Okay.
and the body of primeval man,
Okay.
of Manus, was put to rest far, far beneath the city itself.
Wait, Manus
out
is
of
the
the light
pygmy?
Yeah.
and out of mind.
What the fuck?
We don't know much about Manus, and a lot is left to the imagination. What we do know is that he was a pygmy far from home. He was a part of a race that Gwyn was doing everything in his power to suppress, and when you think on Manus's fate, it's kind of hard to imagine that Gwyn didn't have a hand in it, especially since Gwyn had an order of assassins, the Lord's Blades, in his employ. The leader of the Lord's Blades was Kidan, the Hornet. It stated that she laid waste to Gwyn's enemies, and of course, there's no proof that the Lord's Blades actually killed Manus, but you could also argue that that's rather the point of assassins, isn't it? Whatever the case, the tide was turning. Mankind was struggling against the world order,
Where's
and
Artorias?
even New Londo, which was once a haven for undead, had turned into a hideous spawning ground for the Abyss and
Oh,
its dark
those
wraiths.
guys.
At the heart of this uprising was a serpent named Karth, who swayed the 4 kings and taught its undead knights how to pillage back their humanity. Some descriptions even say that dark wraiths became the most human of all, but to others,
The dark wraiths are the enemies of man, and any living thing that has a soul.
so as the age of man crept ever
Oh,
closer,
shit.
Yet another Knight of Gwyn
There he
appeared,
is, dude.
perfectly equipped to face it.
There
The
he
great
is.
Knight Artorias.
Okay.
With a greatsword weighted to strike harder against servants of the dark, a great wolf who defined their fighting style, and a covenant with the beasts of
There's
the
the wolf
abyss,
Sif.
Knight Artorias and Sif defiantly faced the worst of mankind.
Wow.
Yet, in the end, the terror that was the Dark Wraiths could only be stifled with the sacrifice of their entire city. Such was the power of their 4 kings and the resilience of their abyss. Luckily for Gwyn, such a safety measure had been put in place years ago, and so the sealers of New Londo watched stoically as water rushed into the city and thousands of innocents died by their hand.
The entire city was sacrificed to contain them, for that is how great a threat they were.
But while Gwyn did manage to put the New Londo threat on hold, no one was prepared for the outbreak in Ulasil. I imagine when they figured out that a primeval human was buried beneath their very city, the temptation must have been too great to resist.
Believe it or not, Ulasil has brought the abyss upon itself, fooled by that toothy serpent. They upturned the grave of primeval man and incited his ornery wrath. What could they have been thinking?
Like the mad pygmy king before him, Manus rejected death, and he was as far from peace as could be. The raw emotion of humanity that we mentioned earlier billowed outwards, corrupting the townsfolk of Ulasil, and Manus became the father of an unstoppable dark abyss. Curiously, though, it's almost as if he was searching for something,
He's not
using
really a
his
pygmy,
power
though.
to
He's really big.
reach across time and space until he found it. Instead, he found Dusk, Princess of Ulasil.
I still think on that creature from the abyss that preyed upon me. My faculties were far from lucid, but I quite clearly
There was
sensed
the girl
certain
at the
emotions,
end after
a wrenching
after you kill
nostalgia,
Manus.
a lost joy, an object
And
of
she just moans
obsession,
whenever you
and
go
a
near her, you try to
sincere
talk to her.
hope to reclaim it. Could these thoughts belong to the beast from the abyss?
Holy
But if
shit.
that were true,
Yeah, I did almost kill her.
then perhaps it is no beast after all.
The object of his obsession was a pendant, and with it in our possession, we're pulled back to a time where all appears lost.
Well, look at this one. From what faraway age hast thou come? Thy scent is very human indeed, but not intolerable. I am Elizabeth, guardian of this sanctuary. Thou shalt see further on, an abyss was begat of the ancient beast, and threatens to swallow the whole of Ulasil.
The city is lost, the abyss is spreading, and mankind has succumbed to the worst parts of their
This
nature.
is really complex.
When Gwyn heard of Manus
no fucking
and
How the
the
fuck do you
abyss,
even figure this
Artorias
out?
must have been the first one sent to deal with the threat. He was, after all, the best equipped. But fighting dark wraiths is considerably different to the power of primeval man. So Artorias was bested and was forced to retreat.
Oh, so he
Beset by the abyss, the final act of Artorias was to protect his companion. He shielded Sif with the divine power of his great shield. After all, his arm was broken, and he could no longer bear the burden. Then, Artorias himself was overcome.
All of you, forgive me, for I have availed you nothing.
Knight Artorias came to stop this, but such a hero has nary a murmur of dark. Without doubt he will be swallowed by the abyss, overcome by its utter blackness. Indeed, the abyss may be unstoppable.
All was lost, and yet strangely, soon after the spread of the abyss was actually halted,
Wow.
and Princess Dusk of Ulasil miraculously wandered out of the abyss. Artorias' name henceforth passed into legend, the knight who gave his life to disperse the abyss to rescue the Princess of Ulasil. This is a lie, of course. In reality, it is we who rescued the princess, and we fulfilled the legacy of Artorias.
This may strike thine ear as somewhat peculiar, but long ago, in my homeland of Ulasil, I was beset by a creature from the abyss. I would have perished then, were it not for the great knight Artorias. In truth, I saw little of what transpired, for mine senses were already fled, but even still, there was something about Artorias, a certain balance of the humors that quite perfectly fits your semblance. Heavens, could it be that?
With this, Manus's suffering has ended. But Manus wasn't the only corruption of the Abyss that we killed in Oolacile. There was also Artorias. The legend of Artorias is a lie. He did not vanquish the Father of the Abyss. He did not eliminate the Dark Wraiths of New Londo. The Abyss is unstoppable, and yet, eons later, the legend of Artorias would inspire a legion of Abyss Watchers who continue to rage against the dying of the light. Yes, the Abyss is unstoppable, but they fight nonetheless. Even in this state, notice that Artorias continues to seek out and kill corruptions of humanity. He's still in there somewhere, but his legend can only live on with his death. Only his fellow knights knew the truth, that they would take his soul and his secret to the grave. And while Artorias' soul was corrupted by the worst of humanity, it was the best of humanity that redeemed it. And the hero of Oolacile would disappear without a trace, almost as if he didn't belong. For in reality, he didn't. And eons later, deep within an enchanted wood, behind 2 locked doors and a troop of forest protectors, an ancient cat speaks the truth.
The legend of Artorias art none but a fabrication. Traversing the dark,
I should have
'tis
killed
but a
that
fairy tale.
Alvina is keen to downplay the legend of Artorias because heroes and bandits have begun seeking out his grave. They would desecrate his legacy for the secret of abyss walking, and they may do harm to Sif, who, in fact, Alvina helped you rescue back when the world was still young. Imagine what Sif is feeling when you cross paths again years later. You're duty-bound to seek the abyss, and Sif is duty-bound to stop you. One of you will have to die, because Sif cannot give you the covenant of Artorias willingly. Maybe, in death, he can find his friend Artorias again.
Wow. That's really good, actually. Holy shit. Damn.
Before I go, I just want to say a couple more things. Firstly, this video was made far, far better by the contributions of a guy called the Parry God, who recorded footage for me this time. It allowed me to sort of focus more on the script and the edit. He's responsible for slow motion shots, which I didn't know how to do, but they fit really, really well with the pacing of the video. So do me a favor and please go watch his cinematic short film on Dark Souls 3, because it's inspiring stuff. He's just getting his channel started, and his upcoming work is really well worth your subscription, in my opinion. And this is an appropriate video to shout out somebody else's channel in, because all those years ago, this video, Prepare to Cry, Artorias, this was the story I decided to tell for the first time, and this is the video that got my channel started, so being able to work on this again after everything I've learned was really special for me, and I really appreciate that you watched it all the way through. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.
That was really good. That was actually really, really good. I didn't expect it to be that good. honestly, like, the whole, like, the story and everything was really fucking awesome. Sir Puddles with donated $5. Artorias is left-handed, broke his left arm. Imagining him fighting with his sword equipped with his good arm. Yeah, it'd be almost like me playing with a controller. Thanks for the 5. Appreciate that. Bafclack donated $100. Thank you so much, man. Holy fuck, thank you. Saying that Bloodborne and Dark Souls are different universes is very debatable. Pretty sure VaatiVidya has a video on it, but I don't think he ever has them linked. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's really fucking cool, though. Thank you. And Dark Souls check Destiny raids like the Riven one, please. I'm not sure about that. We'll see what happens, man. Holy fuck, man.
Holy fuck, what? Dude. What a fucking video, man.
What a fucking video.
And you killed him. You killed the dog, dude. You had no idea what you were doing. You just went in there and you fucked up the dog and you didn't care at all.
Well, I mean, I had to get the loot, man. Like, I mean, what was I supposed to do? I mean, it's a dog. Like, I mean, it's not my fault. Like, the dog attacked me first. I literally just walking around and the dog picks up a sword and it starts trying to bite me with the sword. Of course I'm gonna, yeah, of course I'm gonna have to beat his ass. Like, what do you mean? He's protected? No, I was just going there. I didn't even want anything. I was exploring. I didn't even know what the hell I was doing, man. I'm completely confused.